I'm Amanda Martinez, and I thought I knew what marriage looked like until the day I came home to find my mother-in-law reorganizing my spice rack like she owned the place. What started as a temporary emergency became the moment I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can make you feel like a stranger in your own home. It was a Tuesday evening in March when everything changed. I'd just finished a grueling 10-hour shift at the marketing firm where I work as a senior account manager. All I wanted was to kick off my heels, pour a glass of wine, and decompress in the quiet sanctuary of our two-bedroom house. Michael and I had bought this place 3 years ago, and it was our little haven. Modern, clean, and most importantly, ours. But as I turned my key in the front door, the familiar scent of my lavender diffuser was overpowered by something else entirely. Industrial-strength cleaning products mixed with the smell of someone else's cooking. My heart skipped a beat as I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Multiple voices that definitely didn't include just Michael. "Honey, you're home!" Michael called out with an enthusiasm that seemed forced. He appeared in the hallway with an expression I'd never seen before. Part guilty child, part defensive husband. "I have some news." That's when Patricia Martinez stepped out of my kitchen, wiping her hands on one of my good dish towels. My mother-in-law is a woman who's never met a boundary she couldn't cross or a situation she couldn't take charge of. At 62, she carries herself with the confidence of someone who believes her way is always the right way. "Amanda, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into one of those hugs that feels more like a territorial claim. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of reorganizing your spice cabinet. You had paprika next to oregano. That's just chaos waiting to happen." Before I could process what she'd just said, Stephen Martinez emerged from what used to be our living room, carrying a gaming chair that definitely wasn't ours. My brother-in-law is 35, unemployed for the better part of 2 years, and has never met a responsibility he couldn't avoid. Behind him came Jennifer Martinez, his wife, dragging a suitcase that looked like it was packed for a month-long vacation. "Surprise!" Michael said with the kind of fake cheerfulness that made my stomach drop. "Mom, Stephen, and Jen needed a place to stay for a while. Their landlord sold the building, and they have to be out by Friday. I told them they could crash here until they figure things out." I stood there in my own entryway, briefcase still in hand, trying to process what I was seeing. Our minimalist living room now looked like a storage unit had exploded in it. Boxes, bags, and furniture were stacked everywhere. The coffee table we'd saved up for 6 months to buy was shoved against the wall to make room for Stephen's recliner. "How long is a while?" I asked, hoping my voice sounded calmer than I felt. "Oh, not long at all," Patricia chimed in before Michael could answer. "Just until we find something suitable. You know how picky I am about neighborhoods. I need somewhere safe, clean, with good schools nearby for when Stephen and Jennifer start their family." Jennifer snorted from behind her suitcase. "Schools! We can barely afford groceries, Mom." "That's why family helps family," Patricia replied sharply, then turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I knew you'd understand, Amanda. You've always been so accommodating." The way she said accommodating made it sound like a character flaw. Michael wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and I could feel the tension in his body. "It's just temporary, babe. They really needed help, and we have the space." I looked around our space, our 200-square-foot house that suddenly felt like it had shrunk to the size of a closet. The space we'd carefully designed and furnished together. The space where we'd planned to start our own family someday. The space that was now occupied by 3 additional adults and what looked like half a moving truck worth of belongings. "Of course," I heard myself saying, though every instinct was screaming at me to object. Family comes first. That first night set the tone for what would become the most suffocating 3 months of my life. I woke up to find Patricia in my kitchen at 6 a.m., having already started coffee using a different method than I preferred, in mugs I'd never seen before that she'd apparently brought from storage. "I hope you don't mind," she said as I stumbled in wearing my robe. "I'm an early riser, and I figured I'd get breakfast started. Michael mentioned you usually just grab a granola bar, but a man needs a real breakfast to start his day right." She was making eggs Benedict in my kitchen, using ingredients I hadn't bought, while criticizing my morning routine. "That's thoughtful," I managed, reaching for my usual travel mug only to find it dirty in the sink. I usually just... Oh, I put that through the dishwasher. It smelled like old coffee. You should really rinse things immediately after use. I stared at the woman who was lecturing me about cleaning in my own kitchen while dirty pans from her elaborate breakfast preparation covered every surface. But I just nodded, grabbed a different mug, and made my coffee in silence. By the time I left for work, Stephen had claimed my home office as his personal gaming room. The desk where I sometimes brought work home was now covered with energy drink cans and chip bags. My carefully organized filing cabinet had been moved to make room for his gaming setup, complete with multiple monitors and a sound system that could probably be heard in the next county. "Stephen needs somewhere to decompress," Michael explained when I pointed out that I actually used that room for work. "He's been really stressed about the job search." "What job search?" I asked. Michael didn't have an answer for that. Jennifer, meanwhile, had taken over our bathroom with an array of beauty products that looked like she'd raided a Sephora. Our medicine cabinet, which used to hold our basic necessities, was now crammed with her skincare routine that apparently required 14 different serums and 3 types of face masks. "She's going through a difficult time," Michael said when I mentioned that I couldn't find my contact solution. "The move has been really hard on her." But what bothered me most wasn't the displaced belongings or the invaded spaces. It was the way every decision in my own home suddenly required a family meeting. When I suggested ordering Thai food for dinner, Patricia wrinkled her nose and said Stephen couldn't handle spicy food. When I wanted to watch the news, Jennifer needed the TV for her stories. When I tried to do laundry on Sunday morning, I was told that Patricia preferred to do the family wash all together to save water. 3 weeks in, I noticed our grocery bill had nearly tripled, but no one had offered to contribute. When I mentioned this to Michael, he looked genuinely surprised. "They're family, Amanda. We can't charge them rent." "I'm not talking about rent," I said carefully. "I'm talking about groceries, utilities, the extra water and electricity. Basic contributions." "Mom's been cooking for everyone," he said defensively. "That's her contribution." I wanted to point out that cooking with groceries I paid for wasn't exactly a contribution, but the way he said it made me feel petty for even bringing it up. The breaking point started building on a rainy Thursday evening in June. I'd had a particularly stressful day at work, dealing with a client who'd decided to completely change their campaign direction 3 days before launch. All I wanted was to come home, take a hot bath, and have a quiet evening with my husband. Instead, I walked into what sounded like a family reunion in full swing. Patricia was holding court in the living room, telling Stephen and Jennifer about her plans to redecorate our guest bedroom, to make it more functional for long-term use. Stephen was explaining his latest get-rich-quick scheme involving cryptocurrency and energy drinks. Jennifer was on the phone with someone, loudly discussing her plans to sign up for online college courses. Now that I have stable housing, in my house, that she wasn't paying for. Michael was in the kitchen looking overwhelmed as he tried to cook dinner for 5 people in a space designed for 2. When he saw me, his face lit up with relief. "Thank God you're home," he said, lowering his voice. "Mom's been planning renovation projects all day, and Stephen wants to borrow the car tomorrow for a job interview that's 2 hours away." "Renovation projects?" I repeated. "Nothing major," he said quickly. "Just some improvements to make the space work better for everyone." That's when I realized that this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a short-term emergency solution while they got back on their feet. This was a permanent arrangement that everyone had agreed to except me. I excused myself and went to our bedroom, the only space in the house that was still recognizably ours. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to remember what our life had been like 3 months ago. Quiet morning coffees together, spontaneous dinner dates. The freedom to walk around in my underwear if I wanted to, privacy, peace, partnership, all of it was gone, replaced by constant noise, invasion of space, and a husband who seemed more concerned with keeping his family happy than protecting our marriage. That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed, I tried to talk to Michael about setting some boundaries. "We need to discuss a timeline," I said as we got ready for bed. "And some house rules. I can't live like this indefinitely." "Live like what?" he asked, genuinely confused. "They're not causing any problems." I stared at him in disbelief. "Michael, I can't use my own bathroom without waiting in line. I haven't been able to cook a meal in my own kitchen in 2 weeks. Stephen is using my office as his personal arcade. Your mother is planning to renovate our house without asking us. She's just trying to help make the space more efficient." "It's not her space to make efficient." The words came out louder than I intended. "This is our home. We bought it together, we pay for it together, and we should get to decide who lives in it together." Michael's expression shifted from confusion to defensiveness. "So you want me to throw my family out on the street?" "I want you to have a conversation with them about finding their own place. I want you to set a reasonable timeline. I want you to recognize that this situation is affecting our marriage." "You're being dramatic," he said dismissively. "It's not that bad." But it was that bad, and it was about to get worse. The next morning, I woke up to find that Patricia had decided to surprise me by doing my laundry. My expensive work clothes were hanging on a makeshift clothesline she'd strung up in our bedroom because she'd decided the dryer was too harsh for delicate fabrics. My favorite silk blouse had shrunk to child size, and my wool blazer looked like it had been put through a blender. "I was just trying to help," she said when I found her in the laundry room. "You work so hard, I thought I'd take this off your plate." But the way she said it, combined with the smug little smile on her face, made me wonder if the ruined clothes were really an accident. That evening, I tried again to have a serious conversation with Michael. I'd spent my lunch break looking up local apartments and came home with a list of places his family could afford if they pooled their resources. "I'm not kicking them out," he said before I could even finish explaining my research. "They're going through a tough time, and we have room to help." "We don't have room," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "We have a 2-bedroom house that's now housing 5 adults. Our electric bill has doubled. I can't work from home anymore because Stephen has taken over my office. Your mother is making decisions about our house like she lives here." "She does live here," Michael said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Temporarily. For as long as they need to." "And how long is that?" "However long it takes." I realized in that moment that Michael had made a decision about our future without consulting me. He'd decided that his family's needs were more important than our marriage, our privacy, our financial stability, and my comfort in my own home. 2 days later, everything came to a head. I came home from work to find Patricia in my bedroom going through my jewelry box. She was holding a necklace my grandmother had given me, examining it like she was appraising its value. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. "Oh!" She startled, but didn't put the necklace down. "I was just looking for something to borrow for Jennifer's job interview tomorrow. She needs to look professional, and she doesn't have appropriate jewelry. That's my grandmother's necklace." "I know, dear. It's lovely. Jennifer would take very good care of it." I walked over and gently but firmly took the necklace from her hands. "It's not available to borrow." Patricia's expression hardened. "It's just a necklace, Amanda. Family should share." "It's my grandmother's necklace," I repeated, "and you don't go through someone else's personal belongings without asking." "I live here too," she said with a tone that made my blood run cold. "I shouldn't have to ask permission to look around my own home." Her own home. I went to find Michael, who was in the kitchen with Stephen and Jennifer, planning some sort of family barbecue for the weekend. Without asking me, in my backyard, using my grill. "We need to talk," I said. "Now. Privately." Michael followed me to our bedroom, where I closed the door and tried to compose myself before speaking. "Your mother was going through my jewelry box," I said. "She probably just needed something for Jennifer's interview." "She was going through my personal belongings without permission, Michael." "In our bedroom. She said she didn't need to ask permission because this is her home too." Michael was quiet for a moment. "Maybe you're overreacting." "Am I? Because I feel like I'm living with strangers who think they own my house. I feel like my husband cares more about his family's comfort than his wife's feelings. I feel like I don't have a say in my own life anymore." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When was the last time you and I made a decision together about anything? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about accommodating your family's needs? When was the last time you chose my side over theirs?" Michael ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. They're my family, Amanda. I can't just abandon them. I'm not asking you to abandon them. I'm asking you to set boundaries. I'm asking you to remember that I'm your family too. I'm asking you to care about how this is affecting me. You're being selfish, he said quietly. The word hit me like a slap. Selfish? Yes, selfish. They need help, and we're in a position to provide it. But all you can think about is your comfort, your space, your things. I stared at my husband, the man I'd married, the man I'd bought a house with, the man I'd planned a future with, and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. If wanting basic respect in my own home makes me selfish, I said carefully, then I guess I'm selfish. Finally, he said, some honesty. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Michael slept peacefully beside me. I listened to Stephen's gaming session bleeding through the walls, Patricia's late-night phone calls with her friends about her living situation, and Jennifer's YouTube makeup tutorials playing at full volume. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 months ago, confident, independent, happy in her own space. I thought about the relationship Michael and I had built together, based on mutual respect and shared decision-making. I thought about the future we'd planned and how different it looked now. The next morning was Saturday, which meant Patricia had planned a family breakfast that would take up the entire morning and leave the kitchen destroyed for the rest of the day. I woke up to the sound of her banging pans and criticizing Michael's pancake flipping technique. I'd had enough. I got dressed and went to the kitchen, where the whole family was gathered around our small dining table, eating off our good dishes like it was a holiday morning. Michael, I said calmly, I need to speak with you. Can it wait? He asked without looking up from his plate. Mom made her famous French toast. No, it can't wait. The tone of my voice must have conveyed something because everyone looked up. Patricia had that pursed lip expression she wore when she was about to say something passive-aggressive. Stephen looked annoyed at the interruption. Jennifer was already reaching for her phone to document the drama. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, I said to Michael, and I've realized you're right. I am? Yes, I am being selfish. I'm thinking about my comfort, my space, my needs. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Michael frowned. What do you mean? I mean, this arrangement isn't working for me. I've tried to be accommodating. I've tried to be understanding, and I've tried to make this work, but I can't live like this anymore. Amanda, Patricia interrupted, maybe we should discuss this privately. No, I said firmly. This affects everyone, so everyone gets to hear it. I want your family out of my house. I want them out by the end of the month. I want you to set clear boundaries about visits, about decisions regarding our home, and about our marriage being our priority. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stood up slowly, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You can't just kick my family out. I can, actually. It's my house too, and I have a say in who lives here. After everything they've done for us? What exactly have they done for us, Michael? They've contributed nothing financially. They've taken over our entire house, and they've made me feel like a guest in my own home. That's not true, Stephen said, finally speaking up. We help out. How? I asked. How do you help out? I do dishes sometimes. You eat off my dishes, using my electricity, food I paid for, and occasionally you put those dishes in a dishwasher that runs on utilities I pay for. That's not helping out. That's the bare minimum of not being a complete slob. Jennifer's phone was definitely recording now. Patricia stood up, drawing herself to her full height. Amanda, I understand you're upset, but there's no need to be cruel. Cruel? I'm being honest. For 3 months, I've been supporting 4 adults financially while being made to feel guilty for wanting basic respect in my own home. I'm done. Michael stepped closer to me, his voice low and dangerous. You're embarrassing me in front of my family. Good, I said. Maybe you should be embarrassed. Maybe you should be embarrassed that you moved your entire family into our house without discussing it with your wife. Maybe you should be embarrassed that you've let them take over our home and our life. Maybe you should be embarrassed that you've spent 3 months prioritizing everyone's feelings except mine. That's when Michael said the words that changed everything. "You know what, Amanda? You're acting like a selfish bitch." The kitchen went completely silent. Patricia gasped dramatically. Stephen looked like he wanted to disappear. Jennifer held her phone steadier, making sure she got every second. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. "A selfish bitch," I repeated calmly. "Yes, a selfish bitch who can't stand to see family helping family." I nodded slowly. "Okay. You want to see a selfish bitch? Let me show you what a selfish bitch looks like." I walked to our bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, and started packing. I could hear heated whispers from the kitchen, but I didn't care. I packed enough clothes for a week, grabbed my laptop and important documents, and returned to the kitchen where 4 pairs of eyes watched me with varying degrees of shock and satisfaction. "Where are you going?" Michael demanded. "Somewhere I can be as selfish as I want without anyone calling me names for it." "You can't just leave. Watch me." I grabbed my purse and car keys and headed for the door. As I reached the threshold, I turned back to face my husband and his family. "Since I'm such a selfish bitch, I'm sure you won't mind handling all the bills on your own. The mortgage is due on the 15th. Electric bill comes the 20th. Don't forget the water bill, trash pickup, and internet. Oh, and the lawn service is Thursday mornings. I'm sure between the 4 of you, you can figure out how to cover my half of everything." Michael's face went pale. "Amanda, wait!" But I was already walking out the door, and for the first time in 3 months, I could breathe. I drove straight to my best friend Sarah's apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as the adrenaline from the confrontation began to wear off. Sarah took one look at my face and the suitcase in my hand and pulled me inside without a single question. It wasn't until I was sitting on her couch with a cup of tea that I realized I hadn't felt this peaceful in months. "So," Sarah said gently, settling beside me, "do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to just hate Michael on principle?" For the first time since March, I laughed, really laughed. "Both?" Over the next 2 hours, I told her everything: the invasion, the takeover, the complete dismissal of my feelings, and finally, being called a selfish bitch in front of his entire family. Sarah listened without judgment, occasionally making disgusted noises at the appropriate moments. "You know what the crazy part is?" I said as I finished the story. "I actually feel guilty for leaving, like maybe I really was being selfish." "Amanda," Sarah said firmly, "asking for basic respect in your own home isn't selfish, it's human. What they did was take advantage of your kindness, and when you finally stood up for yourself, they tried to make you the villain." That night, sleeping in Sarah's guest room, I experienced something I hadn't felt in 3 months: complete silence. No gaming sounds bleeding through walls, no late-night phone calls, no early morning kitchen takeovers. Just peaceful, blissful quiet. I slept for 10 straight hours. The next morning, I woke up naturally instead of to the sound of Patricia's aggressive breakfast preparation. I made my coffee the way I liked it, ate breakfast at my own pace, and for the first time in months, I wasn't rushing to escape my own living space. My phone had been buzzing all night, but I'd turned it off. When I finally checked it over breakfast, I had 17 missed calls from Michael and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. "Where are you? This is ridiculous, just come home. My family thinks you've lost your mind. You're being completely irrational. Fine, be childish. See how that works out for you." I deleted them all without responding. Sarah had already left for work, but she'd left a note on the coffee maker. "Stay as long as you need. There are extra towels in the bathroom closet, and the Wi-Fi password is MichaelSucks123. Love you." I called in sick to work, the first sick day I'd taken in over a year, and spent the day doing absolutely nothing productive. I took a long bath without anyone banging on the door. I watched whatever I wanted on TV without negotiating with 3 other people. I ordered Chinese food for lunch without having to consider anyone's dietary restrictions or preferences. It was glorious, but as the day wore on, reality started creeping in. I began thinking about the practicalities of what I'd done. Our mortgage was in both our names, but I'd been contributing 60% of it because I made more money. The utilities were mostly in my name. The insurance, the lawn service, even the Netflix account. I handled most of the household finances because I was better with money management. By evening, I was curious enough to check our joint account balance online. What I saw made me sit up straight. In the 3 months since his family had moved in, our monthly expenses had nearly doubled, but only my income was covering the increase. Michael's contribution had remained exactly the same, even though we were now supporting 5 people instead of 2. I started calculating. Groceries that used to cost us $400 a month were now running $800. Our electric bill had jumped from $150 to $280. Water usage had tripled. Even our internet bill was higher because Stephen had upgraded to some premium gaming package without asking. The math was staggering. In 3 months, I had personally subsidized his family's living expenses to the tune of over $3,000, not counting the wear and tear on our home, the damaged clothes, or the complete loss of privacy and peace. I felt like an idiot for not adding it up sooner. That second night, I dreamed about our house the way it used to be. Clean, quiet, ours. I woke up missing it terribly, but not the chaos it had become. My phone was buzzing again. More messages from Michael, but these had a different tone. "Amanda, please call me back. We need to talk about this like adults. You can't just disappear. This is affecting everyone." Still nothing that sounded like an apology or acknowledgement of why I'd left. I spent the day researching my legal options. If we separated, what would happen to the house? What were my rights? Could I force his family out? A consultation with a family law attorney that afternoon gave me some clarity, but also some sobering realities. Legally, since you're married and both on the mortgage, he has the right to have guests, the lawyer explained. But if those guests are causing financial strain and he's not contributing equally to support them, that's something we could address in a separation agreement. And if I wanted to return home, you'd need either his cooperation in setting boundaries with his family, or you'd need to pursue legal separation with specific terms about the marital residence. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls from Michael, 12 from Patricia, and surprisingly, 3 from Jennifer. I listened to Michael's voicemails first. The progression was telling. The first few were angry, demanding I stop being dramatic and come home. The middle ones were frustrated, complaining about how my absence was inconveniencing everyone. But the most recent ones had a different quality. There was worry creeping into his voice. "Amanda, look, maybe we should talk. Things are a little complicated here. Just call me back, okay?" Patricia's messages were exactly what I expected. Passive-aggressive lectures about wifely duties and family obligations, peppered with pointed comments about how my tantrum was affecting everyone's stress levels. But Jennifer's messages surprised me. "Amanda, it's Jennifer. Look, I know we're not close, but could you call me? There's some stuff you should know." Curiosity got the better of me. I called her back. "Oh, thank God," Jennifer said when she answered. "Listen, can you meet me somewhere? I can't really talk here." An hour later, I was sitting across from Jennifer at a 24-hour diner near Sarah's apartment. She looked tired and stressed, which was a change from her usual put-together appearance. "I need to tell you something," she said without preamble. "This whole thing, us moving in with you guys, it wasn't as spontaneous as Michael made it seem." "What do you mean?" "Mom had been planning this for months. She's been talking about how you and Michael have too much space, and how family should pool resources. When our lease came up for renewal, she convinced Stephen not to renew it." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "So you weren't actually forced out by a sale?" "No, I mean, the landlord did sell, but we had the option to stay with the new owners. Mom said it was wasteful to pay rent when you guys had room." "And Michael knew this?" Jennifer looked uncomfortable. "I think Mom presented it to him as an emergency situation. But yeah, he knew we had other options." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. It hadn't been an emergency at all. It had been a planned invasion, orchestrated by Patricia and enabled by Michael. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I feel terrible about it, and because—" She hesitated. "Because living there is awful, Amanda. Mom treats your house like it's hers now. She's making plans to redecorate your bedroom next. And Steven's not even looking for a job. He's planning to file for disability benefits so he can stay permanently. My head was spinning. Permanently? Mom told him that once you got used to the arrangement, it would be the perfect setup. She could help when you guys have kids. Steven could contribute by doing handyman work, and I could help with housework. She has it all figured out. I thought about Patricia going through my jewelry box, claiming my house as her own, making renovation plans. It all made sense now. There's more, Jennifer continued. The night you left, after you drove away, Mom was actually happy. She said now she could really make the place feel like home without you micromanaging everything. I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. I'm telling you this because it's not right, Jennifer said. You were nothing but kind to us, and we took advantage of that. I want you to know that not all of us are okay with what's happening. When I got back to Sarah's apartment that night, I felt like I was seeing the situation clearly for the first time. This hadn't been about helping family in crisis. This had been about Patricia wanting to control our home and our lives, with Michael as her willing accomplice. The next morning brought a flurry of increasingly panicked phone calls from Michael. Amanda, you need to come home, now. Where are you? This has gone on long enough. We have a problem here. Call me back immediately. I didn't call him back. Instead, I spent the morning setting up my own checking account and having my paychecks redirected there. If Patricia wanted to see what selfish looked like, I was happy to show her. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Martinez, this is Janet from County Electric. I'm calling about your account. We show a past due balance, and service will be disconnected tomorrow unless payment is received. I almost laughed. How much is owed? $547, nearly double our normal bill. And when was the last payment made? April 15th, ma'am. 6 weeks ago, right around the time I'd left. I see. And the account is in what name? Amanda Martinez, primary account holder. Thank you for calling. I'll need to think about whether I want to continue service at that address. That afternoon, I got similar calls about the water bill, internet service, and the lawn care company. Every single service that was in my name was behind, and every single bill had nearly doubled since March. Michael called me that evening, and for the first time, I answered. Thank God, he said. Where the hell are you? I'm somewhere safe, I said calmly. What did you need? What did I need? Amanda, you've been gone for a week. You can't just abandon your responsibilities. What responsibilities are those? The house, the bills, your marriage. Interesting. Tell me, Michael, which bills are you referring to? All of them. The electric company called today, and the internet got shut off. Mom had to use her phone as a hotspot. And you need to come home and handle this. Actually, I don't. Those are utilities for a house I'm not living in, being used by people who don't contribute to paying for them. What are you talking about? Of course we contribute. Really? How much have you personally paid toward household expenses since March? Silence. I'll wait. I pay my share of the mortgage. Your share of the mortgage. What about groceries that have doubled? Utilities that have nearly tripled? The lawn service you wanted? The premium internet package Steven installed? More silence. Here's what's going to happen, Michael. Those utilities are in my name, and I'm not paying for services I'm not using for people who treat me like garbage in my own home. You can't do that. We need electricity. Then you should have thought about that before calling me a selfish bitch. I was angry. You were embarrassing me. And now you're embarrassing yourself. Figure out the bills or find somewhere else to live. I hung up. 2 hours later, he called back. Amanda, please, let's just talk about this reasonably. I'm listening. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Maybe we can work out some kind of compromise. What kind of compromise? Well, maybe Mom and Steven could contribute more to expenses. How much more? I don't know. Whatever's fair. What's fair is them having their own place and paying their own bills. They can't afford their own place right now. Then they need to figure something out because I'm not subsidizing grown adults who treat me like garbage anymore. What do you want from me, Amanda? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? I want an apology. I said finally. A real one. I want you to acknowledge that you moved your family into our home without consulting me, that you allowed them to take over our space and our life, and that you called me names when I objected to being treated badly in my own home. Fine, I'm sorry. That's not an apology, that's a placeholder. I want you to understand what you did wrong. Look, maybe I should have talked to you first. Maybe? Okay, I should have talked to you first, but they needed help. And our marriage? Did that need anything? Long pause. What do you mean? I mean, when was the last time you and I had dinner alone? When was the last time we had sex? When was the last time you chose my comfort over your family's demands? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You chose them over me, repeatedly, for months. And when I finally said I couldn't live like that anymore, you called me names instead of listening to my concerns. I said I was sorry. You said the words, "Do you understand why I left?" Another long pause. Because you didn't like living with my family. I realized in that moment that he still didn't get it. He still thought this was about me being uncomfortable with house guests, not about him fundamentally changing our relationship without my consent. No, Michael, I left because my husband disappeared and was replaced by someone who cared more about being a good son and brother than being a good husband. That night, I made a decision. I called the electric company and had service transferred to Michael's name. Same with water, internet, and the lawn service. If he wanted to support his family, he could do it with his own credit and his own money. The next morning, I got a call that made me laugh out loud. "Amanda!" It was Patricia, and she sounded frantic. "You need to fix this right now." "Fix what?" "The utilities. They're saying we need to pay deposits and setup fees. This is ridiculous." "That's what happens when you establish service in your own name." "But we can't afford deposits. Steven's credit is terrible and Michael's is barely better." "That sounds like a problem you'll need to solve. You can't do this to family." "Patricia, I am not your family. I'm the woman whose home you invaded, whose belongings you went through without permission, and who you allowed your son to call names. I don't owe you electricity. Michael is your husband. Yes, and maybe he should start acting like one." She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, Michael called. "Amanda, this is getting ridiculous. The deposits for all the utilities are going to cost over $800. Then you'd better start saving. We don't have $800. We. There is no we in this situation. There's you and your family who need to figure out how to pay for the services you use. Where are you supposed to live?" "I'm staying with Sarah until I decide what I want to do long term. You can't just abandon our marriage." "I'm not abandoning our marriage. I'm refusing to participate in a living arrangement that was destroying it." "So what do you want? You want me to kick my family out?" "I want you to want to protect our marriage more than you want to house your entire extended family." "That's not fair." "What's not fair is subsidizing grown adults who show me no respect in a house I pay most of the mortgage for while my husband calls me names for objecting." "I didn't mean it." "Which part? The selfish part or the bitch part?" "Either. Both. I was just frustrated." "You were frustrated? How do you think I felt for 3 months?" "I know you were upset, but no. No, but. There's no but that makes calling your wife names in front of your family acceptable." That weekend, Sarah convinced me to go out dancing with some friends. It was the first time I'd socialized without worrying about getting home to deal with some family drama or house crisis. I stayed out until 2 a.m., had too many drinks, laughed too loud, and felt like myself for the first time in months. I woke up the next morning to 12 missed calls from Michael. When I called him back, he was practically hyperventilating. "Where were you last night? I called 100 times." "I was out with friends." "Out? Until when?" "Until I decided to come home." "Sarah's not your home." "It's more my home than that house is right now." "Amanda, this is serious. We need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere?" There was something different in his voice. Less anger, more panic. "What's wrong?" "Just, can you meet me? Please?" An hour later, I was sitting across from my husband in the same diner where I'd met Jennifer. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, stressed. "The house is falling apart," he said without preamble. "What do you mean?" "I mean everything. The washing machine is broken, but we can't afford to fix it. Stephen clogged the toilet in the main bathroom, and the plumber wants $300 to snake the line. Mom tried to fix the garbage disposal and broke it completely. The yard looks like a jungle because we can't afford the lawn service." I listened without comment. "And the money situation is—" He ran his hands through his hair. "Amanda, I had no idea how much you were contributing. The utility deposits cleaned out my savings. The grocery bills are insane. Mom wants to buy new furniture for the living room because she says our stuff doesn't flow well. And I can't afford any of this. I make decent money, but not enough to support 4 adults. 5 adults. What? You, me, your mother, Stephen, and Jennifer. 5 adults, although I suppose it's 4 now since I'm not living there." "Right. 4 adults. But the point is, I finally understand what you were trying to tell me." I waited. "We can't afford this. I can't afford this. And they're not really contributing much." "How much?" "Mom gives me $50 a week for groceries, but we're spending over $200. Stephen was supposed to fix things around the house, but he's broken more than he's fixed. Jennifer helps with cleaning, but she uses more products than she cleans with." "I see. And honestly," he lowered his voice, "it's not fun living with them. Mom criticizes everything I do. Stephen games until 3 a.m. with the volume up. Jennifer leaves her stuff everywhere. I can't walk around in my underwear or have friends over or just relax. Imagine that." He looked up at me sharply. "You're enjoying this." "I'm not enjoying your suffering, Michael. But I am experiencing some vindication that the problems I tried to explain to you for months are now obvious to you too." "So what do we do?" "What do you mean, we?" "I mean, how do we fix this?" I leaned back in my chair, studying the man I'd married. "Do you remember what you said to me the morning I left?" "I said a lot of things." "You called me a selfish bitch for asking for basic respect in my own home." He looked down at his hands. "I know. Do you think I was being a selfish bitch?" Long pause. "No." "Do you think I deserved to be called names in front of your family?" "No." "Do you understand why I left?" Another pause. "Because I wasn't listening to you, because I was putting their needs ahead of yours, because I was letting them treat our home like it was theirs." Finally. "And what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. I mean, I can't just throw them out on the street." "Why not? They're all adults. They all have options. Jennifer told me you knew from the beginning this wasn't actually an emergency." His face flushed. "She told you that?" "She told me your mother had been planning this for months. She told me Stephen's not even looking for work because he's planning to file for disability. She told me your mother was happy I left because now she could really make the place feel like home." Michael buried his face in his hands. "I didn't know about the disability thing." "But you knew it wasn't really an emergency." "Mom made it sound like they had no choice." "They had choices. You chose to believe they didn't because it was easier than setting boundaries." We sat in silence for several minutes. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "I want you to choose our marriage over your family's convenience." "What does that look like?" "It looks like telling them they need to find their own place. It looks like giving them a reasonable timeline to do so. It looks like you prioritizing our relationship and our home." "And if I do that, you'll come home?" I thought about it. "If you do that and mean it and follow through on it, then we can start talking about rebuilding our marriage. But Michael, I'm not coming back to the same situation. I won't live like that again." "Okay? Okay what?" "Okay, I'll talk to them." "When?" "Tonight." The next evening, my phone started ringing at 6 p.m. and didn't stop for 3 hours. Patricia called me 6 times, leaving increasingly hysterical voicemails about how I was destroying the family and how I was manipulating Michael. Stephen called to tell me I was a psycho bitch who was ruining everything for everyone. Even Jennifer called, though her message was apologetic. Michael's call came at 9 p.m. "It's done," he said. He sounded exhausted. "What's done?" I told them. "They have 30 days to find their own place." How did that go? About as well as you'd expect. Mom cried, Stephen yelled, Jennifer tried to mediate. Mom accused me of choosing you over family. And what did you say? I said I was choosing my marriage over everything else, the way I should have from the beginning. Something in my chest loosened for the first time in weeks. What happens now? I asked. Now I spend the next month helping them find a place they can afford, dealing with Mom's guilt trips, and trying to fix the mess I made of our marriage. And after they're gone? After they're gone, I'm hoping my wife will consider coming home. 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of our house for the first time in over a month. It looked different, cleaner, emptier, more like the home we'd built together. Michael had spent the previous week deep cleaning everything, repairing Stephen's damage, and putting our belongings back where they belonged. They found a place? I asked. A 3-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes away. Mom's not thrilled about the neighborhood, but it's what they can afford if they pool resources. And Stephen? Got a job at a warehouse. Turns out the disability thing was just wishful thinking. I walked through our house slowly, reacquainting myself with the space. Our living room looked like our living room again. My office was set up exactly as I'd left it. The kitchen smelled like the candles I liked instead of industrial cleaning products and other people's cooking. I'm not the same person who left here, I told Michael as we sat on our reclaimed couch. I know. I won't go back to being the woman who accommodates everyone else's needs at the expense of her own. I know. And I need you to understand that what happened here, the way you dismissed my feelings, the way you allowed them to treat me, the names you called me, that can't happen again. It won't. How do I know that? He was quiet for a long time. Because I spent 5 weeks living the way you lived for 3 months and it almost broke me. Because I realized that I was so worried about being a bad son that I became a terrible husband. Because I never want to feel the way I felt when I thought I might lose you. We talked until 2 a.m. that night. Really talked, maybe for the first time since we'd gotten married. About boundaries, about priorities, about what we wanted our marriage to look like. About the fact that family helps family, but not at the expense of destroying other relationships. It wasn't perfect. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and I found myself watching for signs that he might prioritize his family's demands over our relationship again. But slowly, we found our way back to each other. Patricia called regularly for months, alternating between guilt trips about how we'd abandoned the family and passive-aggressive comments about how our house was too big for just 2 people. Michael started setting boundaries with those calls too. 6 months later, when Patricia suggested that Stephen and Jennifer might need to move back in temporarily after Stephen lost his warehouse job, Michael's response was immediate and definitive. No, Mom, Amanda and I have discussed this, and we're not available to house anyone long-term, but I'd be happy to help Stephen look for another job or explore other housing options. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. That night, as we sat in our quiet living room, in our peaceful house, with our marriage stronger than it had ever been, Michael took my hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For fighting for us when I was too stupid to know we were worth fighting for. I squeezed his hand. I didn't fight for us. I fought for me. But it turned out to be the same thing. A year later, when people ask me what I learned from the experience, I tell them this. Sometimes loving someone means refusing to enable their worst impulses. Sometimes protecting your marriage means being willing to walk away from it temporarily. And sometimes the people who call you selfish are the ones who have been selfishly benefiting from your generosity all along. I also learned that I'm much stronger than I thought I was, that my boundaries matter, and that a marriage worth having is one where both people choose each other every day over everyone else's expectations and demands. Michael learned that family loyalty doesn't mean blind accommodation, that being a good husband sometimes means disappointing other people, and that the woman he married was worth fighting for, even if that meant fighting against his own family. We're still married. We're still in our house, and we've never been happier. But Patricia still thinks I'm a selfish bitch. And honestly, I'm okay with that.